This poem is widely known today, a staple of early education about ancient poetry, but it wasn't quite so in the Qing dynasty. This shows how skilled Empress Dowager Cixi was in appreciating poetry. With so many great poets in ancient China, can you guess who Cixi's favorite poet was? The answer is Li Bai. Cixi had read almost all of Li Bai's poetry and could even recite much of it from memory. When I read this, I was quite surprised. It made me realize that Cixi admired poems that were soaring, youthful, and filled with inspired creativity. This unique hobby of the Empress Dowagers created a trend in the court at the time. Every literati who could compose poetry saw imitating Li Bai as a mark of honor. If one could earn a compliment or two from the Empress Dowager, they felt they were on par with Li Bai. A trend akin to flattery and praise was rampant. The special train journeyed with stops along the way, and at each station, officials came out to welcome her. For example, upon arriving in Tianjin, Yuan Shikai brought a band to perform a piece for Cixi and even presented 2 parrots. These parrots loudly exclaimed, "Long live the old Buddha, long live in peace." This was extremely flattering, but Derling noticed that Emperor Guangxu glared fiercely at Yuan Shikai. He disliked the man. Continuing onwards to Shanhaiguan, Cixi would order the train to stop so she could be lifted to a small hill behind the city, where she looked out over the Great Wall. Cixi sighed, saying, "Back then, this wall was meant to keep us apart from the Mongols. In the end, General Wu Sangui welcomed us in to help the Chinese emperor. Some say we were invaders, but we weren't invading. We were invited." That's how Cixi saw it. After leaving Shanhaiguan, the group finally arrived in Fengtian. Cixi visited the palace relic hall, where artifacts from the Tongji emperor were displayed. There was a gypsum rabbit that moved its eyes and tongue. Cixi picked up this toy, revealing a sorrowful expression. That was the first time she held something herself. This detail shows us a mother who had lost her son. Surely a mother would feel immense grief. Hence, some legends say, Cixi personally poisoned the Tongji emperor. Of course, this has always been debated. Perhaps the truth of history is now lost. But human nature always prompts us to reflect. There's a segment in this book that I must mention. It shows another side of Cixi. One year, on the 17th day of the 7th lunar month, it was the anniversary of the Xianfang emperor's death. Early that morning, preparations for the sacrifice were made in the palace. On this day, Cixi was full of melancholy and sorrow. She knelt before the shrine of the late emperor, mourning for a long time. She had a moment of introspection, recorded by Derling. Cixi said, sharing her innermost thoughts with her late husband, Emperor Xianfeng. Cixi said, "Do you know? Since I was young, my life has been very bitter. I never received any joy from my parents. Because I was not likable, my sister always got everything she wanted, while I was often ignored. When I first entered the palace, many were jealous of me because at that time, everyone thought I was beautiful. But beyond being pretty, I believed myself to be clever. I accepted the challenge and won against them. After I entered the palace, the late emperor loved me very much and barely looked at anyone else. I was fortunate to give birth to a son, which made my position in his heart even more unshakable. However, my bad luck started then. That unlucky day refers to the year Xianfeng 10, when the British and French forces breached the Forbidden City, burning down the old summer palace. The emperor and Empress Dowager fled to Ruihei shortly after, and soon after, Emperor Xianfeng passed away, marking a series of tragic events. Cixi reminisced. Back then, I was still young, accompanying a critically ill husband and a young son. The nephew of the Eastern Palace harbored ambitions, but lacked the rightful claim due to not being of direct imperial lineage. I didn't want anyone else to endure the perils I faced. As the emperor approached his final moments, barely conscious, I brought the crown prince to his side and asked how succession should be decided. He didn't respond, so in my urgency I said, "Your son is here." Upon hearing this, he immediately opened his eyes and affirmed, "Naturally, he shall inherit the throne."